Last July, during one of the worst heat waves I've ever experienced, something happened that still haunts me to this day. It was a night like any other, but what happened was anything but normal. I was in the middle of an intense FIFA match with my friend Carl when the phone rang. It was Tori. We had a habit of talking around 9 p.m. every night. I paused the game, told Carl I'd pick up, and picked up. Tori lived about a 20-minute drive away, and she asked me to come to her house. She said her parents were out for the day, and they went out often. Her parents were a fun couple. They weren't irresponsible, but they were carefree. They'd go out a few nights a week, leaving Tori to fend for herself. That night, they went out again. We talked for a while, and then Tori said she'd make some pasta and call me back. I kept playing games with Carl, hoping she would call back, but time passed and she still didn't. I tried FaceTime her. The first call didn't go through, but the second one did. She answered, went upstairs, and said the front door was open. Her dad's car wasn't there, so her parents weren't home yet. She left her phone on the bed, the camera pointed at the ceiling. I could hear her screaming from the kitchen, probably about the overcooked pasta. But then I saw something that made me freeze. A man's face appeared on the screen, just for a second. He looked straight into the camera, and I felt like he was looking right at me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't hang up. I ran to get the house phone and called 911. I told them to come to Tori's address immediately because there was a break-in. I panicked, but I knew I had to stay calm. Tori went back to her room, apologizing for keeping me waiting so long. I had to think fast. I couldn't give her any direct warning about her safety. I told her that Carl was outside with her backpack. She was confused, but she grabbed her slippers and went outside. That's when I yelled at her to run to the neighbor's house. She panicked, started crying, and ran to the neighbor's house. When I got there, the police were already inside her house. The intruder had escaped. We locked all the doors and she stayed at my house that night. Unfortunately, the intruder was not caught. My best friend Casey and I were usually inseparable on the weekends. We hung out together, always supported each other. But one weekend, I had to work overtime at work and couldn't hang out with her. Little did I know, this would lead to one of the most terrifying nights of my life. Casey went out with our other friends, Connie and Rachel, to an outdoor beach bar. I was sad and a little jealous because I wanted to go there. Feeling annoyed, I ignored Casey's messages and spent the night watching movies. When I finally checked my messages, I saw a bunch of messages from Connie and Rachel in our group chat, asking where Casey was and if I knew where she was. I checked my messages, but Casey hadn't sent anything since the last message I ignored. I sent her a message, "Hey, are you okay?" The text had been sent, so her phone was still on. Connie and Rachel said that the last time they saw Casey, she was with a guy at a bar, but then she disappeared. I tried FaceTime her, and someone answered, but it wasn't Casey. It was just a dark room, and the person who answered was off camera. I kept asking, "Where's Casey?" until the call ended. Then I got a FaceTime call from her number. A man's whispering voice told me that Casey was okay, that she had gone home with him and was asleep. But he wouldn't show me his face and told me not to call anymore because he didn't want to wake her. I told him to turn on the lights and let me see Casey, but he was silent and then the call ended. I told Connie and Rachel, and we were all worried about her. After we kept calling Casey's phone, he finally sent an address saying, "We're here, come pick up your friend." The location was a small house 15 minutes away. Connie and Rachel agreed that something was wrong and warned me not to go there. I remembered I had Casey's mother's phone number, so I called her. She said Casey was home, crying, but safe. Casey got into what she thought was an Uber with the guy she met, but it was a trap. She escaped, but without her phone. I FaceTimed Casey again. The room was dark again. I said, "I'm on my way." And the whispering voice replied, "Fine, don't knock, just come right in." Then something unexpected happened. The phone was picked up, and all I saw was a creepy man with a big smile and wide eyes. I hung up immediately. Casey called her mother from a stranger's phone. We met the police at the address provided. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. The next morning, an older man answered the door. He claimed he knew nothing about the situation and that no young people lived there. Casey's phone was never found, and its location was never updated again. Casey escaped a terrible fate that night. It's scary to think about what could have happened. Stay safe and be aware of your surroundings. One night, I was home alone with my younger brother during a snowstorm in January. My parents were both out. My brother was in his room doing something, and I was playing League of Legends on the computer. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the door. My brother asked if I could drive him to a friend's house. I agreed only because I had a Pathfinder that worked well in snow and ice, and his friend's house was only 5 minutes away. I left and was back within 15 minutes. I went into the house the same way I left it, quiet and empty. I went back to playing games on the computer and FaceTime my friend Jay. We did this often. I left my phone on the screen so we could see each other and talk. This went on for about an hour or two before I heard a sound from downstairs. I assumed my brother had been taken home, or maybe it was our cat. I didn't go down to check. A few minutes later, when I least expected it, Jay suddenly said, "Mark, I think your brother is sneaking up behind you." I turned around but didn't see anyone. I asked Jay again, and he said he saw my brother peeking out from behind the wall. I called out my brother's name, but no one answered. I checked the stairs and didn't see anyone. I wasn't sure if Jay was joking, but he insisted he was telling the truth. I checked my brother's room first. The lights were off and the door was closed. I checked my parents' room and the living room, but there was nothing there either. The front door was still closed and locked. At this point, I thought Jay was trying to scare me or he was mistaken. I went downstairs to look for Sunshine the cat and found her hiding behind the sofa. This was unusual and made me even more worried. I heard a soft breathing sound from behind the sofa. I stood up, took a step closer, and heard the breathing more clearly. I didn't run. I went to the kitchen, got my phone, and called 911. Jay was still on FaceTime and heard my call to 911. The police arrived very quickly and I opened the door for them. They asked, "Where is he?" And I pointed to the basement. The police started yelling and I didn't see what was happening, but they found the intruder with his hands up behind the couch. He was a white male in his 20s. He had a large knife in his pocket that God knows what he was planning to do with. Thank God he didn't hurt our cat. The fact that I was on FaceTime with Jay probably saved my life. I think he saw or heard me talking to Jay and didn't want witnesses. He hid in the basement instead of leaving. Maybe he was waiting until everyone in the house was asleep. It was my fault for not locking the door when I took my brother. Even though we live in a safe neighborhood, no one is really safe. The intruder was named Richard Taylor and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. My family was shocked but proud of how I handled the situation.